Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're back looking at the planned economy changes for April 2018 for pretty much all the vehicles in the game. There are a few which escaped the bat, but a lot of them have been thwacked massively. Now we're on to Britain. If you wanted to look at USSR, Germany, and USA, that was in part 1. And also we went over this stuff in part 1. If you haven't seen it, basically they're reducing the F3D in RP requirements and also SL, same with the whole reproduction, which is really nice. And in SB, your rewards for killing bases are down by 5%. So that's pretty much the only big changes, but when we look at the repair changes, there is a few with this as well. So the general rule with Britain is the fact that we have fighters down, and also some of the fighters are significantly down. The first one, which is significantly down, is the Hunter F1. So the Hunter 20,000 was quite an expensive aircraft, especially when you compare it to the Canadair Sabre, the Sabres from the Americans, the MiG-17. Now it is slightly less, but still more expensive than the majority. It sits at 13,000 with a reduction of 6,869. Also the Venom and the Vampire get a reduction, which is nice because I have actually taken a liking to the Vampire. At 7.3 you can actually run a really good ground lineup with it. The Conqueror Mark II, the Cent Mark 10, and then either the Conway or the Vickers if you want. So adding the Vampire with that and also the Attacker is a really nice little mix. Now I wouldn't recommend it in air realistic, but in ground realistic it definitely can do really well for you. Also on top of that, one of my favorite vehicles in game, if not still my favorite vehicle in game, the Tempest Mark V is going down by 3,400. Thank God. We're under 10k in that machine now. I remember when it was way more than that. And that was basically before all of the Griffin splits were added. And when this thing was amazing against the Americans, when there was no P-51H, when the Germans, the best thing I had was the D-13. The Tempest Mark V was my go-to. It worked really well. It still works really well. And to see it get a wonderful, repair cost reduction makes me feel great. On top of that, a lot of the fighters went down, as I said before, by, 1,000, 2,000 each. The Spitfires, a lot of them got a really nice reduction on them. The main one is the LF Mark 9. The LF Mark 9 is definitely used less than the F Mark 9 just because of the BR difference and the power that you get from the LF Mark 9 is overshadowed by the BR difference comparing it to the F Mark 9, meaning that you see a lot more F Mark 9s than you do the LF Mark 9. So I'm guessing this repair price drop is trying to stop that from happening so we can see more LFs, or it's just to bring it in line with the rest of the machines that we see, especially the Merlin Spitfires. The F Mark 9 is still incredibly cheap to use. It's one of my favorite aircraft personally in the British tree, but obviously the Tempest gets that role. As you can see, a lot of green here for the British, which is very nice. The next one is the fact that the bombers. So the attackers are also down, but not by a lot. The only one which is up is the Hornet, and that's basically because of its air spawn. It's now at 13,500. Just to put that in comparison, it is more expensive now than the Hunter F1. So yeah, great stuff. It is less than the Meteor F Mark 8 though. I wish the Hornet was not put at 13,500. It is pretty much it is a very good aircraft. It climbs really well, especially spaded, really good against bombers. The only issue is sometimes you leave yourself alone because you go in head first, and you can't really wait for your team. So basically you end up as a supportive aircraft. After you've killed 2 people, you have to try and drag people down, and then your team swoop on them. And that means that you can die quite a lot in the Hornets, even if you have a really good KD. So pushing it up by 3,500, I'm not exactly sure that I agree with that, but it is definitely something that they're doing. So that I am kind of sad about. The Hornets still will be seen. It also has now its Mark 5s, which is nice, but generally it's kind of, it's a bit iffy for me, especially when everything else is getting reduced. We look at the heavy bombers, or heavy bombers. We have a bit of an issue here. Everything's getting raised. I mean, some of them are not really getting raised, like the Lincoln. The Lincoln is going up by 300. I mean, I won't touch the damn thing until it actually gets its proper bomb load. It's been noted that it has the wrong bomb load. For some reason, it still has the wrong bomb load. I have no idea why. The Lancaster, though, is the real winner here. 20,700 on a Lancaster repair cost. You gotta be joshing me here. 5,490 on top of already 15,000? Who is going around in the Mark III and running people down and being able to make 20 grand in this machine? I can't even make it to a damn base, especially now that a lot of more stuff has air spawns. There's no way you make it to a base on Hokkaido unless you dive. There is no way you make it to a German base because there's always some attacker or some tar which has decided that it doesn't want to spawn on the ground, or even the DOs. The DO335 shits on stuff like the Lancaster nowadays. Why is it that for a pair of 50 cals we have to pay 5,000 more repair cost for the Mark III over the Mark I? And the Mark I's 14,000. What's this nonsense? Why is my Lancaster as much as 3 MiG-17s? Plus the bomb load I have to pay for, plus the crew who I have to, get up in its turret accuracy and all of that stuff, on its things like that, which also cost either a lot of time or some money. And why are you upgrading the Sterling of all things? The Lancaster, okay, at least it's a competent bomber, right? The Lancaster, you can be like, okay, well, it's quite big. It got a flight model update, which has made it feel a bit better. It's a bit more maneuverable now. It's got good turrets on it. It's got a good bomb load. It generally may get to the target on time and before it gets killed, but it will get killed, but at least, it'll get to the target. The Sterlings? When was the last time you saw a Sterling in game, right? Last time for me was maybe 2 months ago when I was playing the G2 Trop. When was the last time I saw a Sterling get to a base? I think I did it once when I was spading the thing. The main way I spaded it was people sitting on my tail and me killing them while they murdered me to death. Right? And now you're raising both of them. Why is the Sterling, of all things, nearly as much as a Hunter? Now, I can understand the up on something like a Halifax. The Halifax is a very good aircraft, right? The Halifax at 6,309. The Halifax has very good defensive armaments. It has a good bomb load for its BR, and it's generally quite fast. It has a good rate of climb. But the Sterling Mark III? Give up. Go home. But the Mark X Wellington sits at about 3,000. Not really much of a change, so not really bothered about it. But the big two there, the Lancaster Mark II, I suppose you can throw in the Mark I as well, because that's already insane, but it hasn't changed that much. It was insane before, it's insane now. And the Sterling Mark III, just out of nowhere, just being insanely expensive. I feel kind of bad for it. The Canberra does go down, though, which is nice for it. The Mark VI with the cannons. Generally, I don't see a lot of them about, though. It is nice to see them when I actually see them, though. One of the things about the Spitfires, though, the majority or all of the Spitfires went down, apart from the Mark 9C. And I think the reason for this is because the Spitfire Mark 9C is an aircraft which was a tournament aircraft, and pretty much the better players in the game were able to get their hands on it through that tournament. So this basically meant that you have a very skewed set of statistics for the Mark 9C. You have incredibly experienced and good players playing the machine, the people who knew about the event, the people who are good enough to get the wins necessary for the event, and on top of that, it has a good BR, it's got 4 Hispanos, and it handles like a Mark 9. So all of these together, I can understand why it got up repair costed. Most of the time you probably won't die in the thing, but yeah, at least I understand that. The Mustang Mark 1A goes down by a hefty margin, which is nice for it. The Mark 1A is another one of the dinosaurs of the times, where it's not as good as it used to be. It's still a fun aircraft to fly, though, especially at low altitudes, where people forget that the Mark 1A can actually turn really well. If we talk about the tanks, the only notable one for me is the Chieftains. If we look at some of the tanks, so like, not the Chieftains, but like the cents and stuff, they all go down, but not by a lot. The main price on the head of Centurion drivers is the sabot that they fire, not the repair cost. Whoops. But the interesting thing is the chieftains. So the Mark III gets increased, the Mark V and 10 get decreased, and the Challenger gets increased. So the Challenger's up to 7,500, which is less than the other two MBTs that we had a look at. I should actually have a look at the T64. What's the T64 at nowadays? Just to see if it's in line with everything else. Right, so that's the premiums. T64B, 7,020. Why is the T64B cheaper than the Challenger? Why is the Leopard more expensive than the T64B? At least there's an argument there, right? There's an argument. The Leopard has a really good gun, incredibly quickly, quite trolley armor, especially with its angles. The T64B compared to the Challenger, the B is better in pretty much every way. There are a few slight things that the B can do better, but overall it is a much better tank. Why is it cheaper than the Challenger? I hate computers. They've plugged into it. They've plugged in some kind of equation. They must have done. But anyway, because some of these changes don't make a lot of sense. Back to the Chieftains. So the Chieftain Mark III has made a bit of a rise as of late because it's at 8.0, and since a lot of the new tanks, the new MBTs were put at 9.3, that meant a lot of people were playing 8.0 to stay away from the 9.3s. This meant 7.0, 7.3, 7.7s were getting into a lot of 8.0 matches. The Mark III did well. That is pretty much my guess why the repair cost has gone up from it, because not a lot of them were dying in matches because, well, they were getting matched up against 7.0, 7.3s. Now that the Abrams is a 9.7s, the BR, which a lot of people are playing at, is 8.3 now. So the Mark III now has to deal with Leopard A1A1s with APFS DS massacring its turret. So I think this change is a little bit premature for the Mark III when we look at it being increased, and I'm guessing it will get changed down again the next time we have a look at a new economy change. The Mark V and the Mark X are getting lowered, which is nice. Normally you don't see those vehicles because either hardly any people have them, or on top of it, they have issues when it comes to their hull. The Mark V is I believe the only difference between the Mark V and the Mark III is the Mark V has a slightly better engine than the Mark III, and it isn't really a massive difference in game, but it is at a higher BR, so that's an issue. The Mark X, with its steel brew armor, it's got a very good turret on it, but once again, it has the same issues as the Mark III and Mark V. It's too slow, its hull is not good enough, and to be honest, when we look at the new reloads of some of these new vehicles, it's going to get taken apart. Especially by stuff like the Leopard 2K. And, the T64 with its APFS DS round, or at least the upgraded one that it gets. So yeah, I can understand why the Chieftains have been lowered. The Mark III, I think, is a little bit premature when we look at what's actually been done to it. On to the Japanese, since there's nothing else to really note. Apart from the Striker, if you're a fan of the Striker, it's gone down by about a third. So hopefully we see a few more of those things. It is nice to see them on the battlefield. I really do like the Swingfire and the Striker. So now that they're both really cheap, hopefully we see more of them. The Japanese get a lot of changes. As you can see, some prayers have been answered. A lot of people were worried, or have been worried, for an incredibly long time about the repair costs of a lot of the Japanese vehicles, especially when it comes to the aircraft. As you can see, a lot of them have been lowered by a hell of a lot. Now, are they comparable to their normal compatriots when we look at the other trees? No, they're still a bit high, but at least now they are usable. The A6M5 Otsu, A7M2, both down by around 6,000 SL, which is amazing. When we look at the J2M5, the J2M3, some of my favorite aircrafts in the Japanese tree, they're down by nearly 10k each. So the cost of a Ferdinand. Think about that. So they're down to 14,400. Still a bit pricey for what they are. Just like the A6M5 Otsu at 14,500. But once again, the fact that they're down is wonderful. It's nice to see. The J7W1 down by 6,500, 13,000. So yeah, still a bit high compared to their counterparts, but at least now it's a lot more manageable than what it was before. The thing about the Japanese aircraft, I've always done pretty well in them. So the repair cost issue that a lot of people have reported has never really bothered me, or I've never had issues with it, even when the Key 84 Co, which is probably the one I've used the most with. But I understand when you look at the numbers, it can be incredibly insane to look at, but then you've got to look at the win rates, and then you've got to look at the survivability of the Japanese aircraft, and it starts to make a little bit of sense. And now with these new repair costs, it starts making a hell of a lot of sense with where they are, and all the stuff I just brought up. So it's nice to see, personally, that the Japanese got dropped quite a lot. There is still issues with some of them. I would still say the A6 M5 Otsu is a bit high at 15 or 14,500, but hopefully it gets dropped. Overall, very positive for Japan. The only not positive thing is their new Sabre. The F40 goes up to 15,000, which is pretty much comparable to a J7 or a J2M5, but a lot of people have been saying this is probably the best Sabre in game. So I haven't played it personally, I've only played against it. It is annoying to kill, I'll say that, but we'll have to see. If you want more about that jet and, the repair cost and what it means, please go ask a jet pilot instead of myself. On top of this, something that is interesting to think about is the Key 84s. The Key 84s have also been reduced. So the Key 84 Co is down by 3,000, the Otsu 8,000, and the High 10,000. So 16,000 on the High, which is nice, still very expensive for what it is. You have to pay a hell of a lot for these 30mm that the Japanese have. But overall, it's just better, right? You can actually make money now playing Rank 4 Japanese. So praise the Lord, praise the snail. We can actually do something at Rank 4. Which isn't try and use some of the bombers. If we look at the general prices for the attackers or the dive bombers, they haven't really changed that much. The only one that has changed is the Key 83. It's down to 12,000 now. The Key 109 is now at 1,710. Yep, nobody's using that. And the 83 is down, but I still would say 13,000 for the Key 83 is very high. So if you want people to actually use that thing, you may have to reduce it a little bit more. The R2Y2s are kind of all over the place. If you look at the V1, the V2, and the V3, there generally isn't that many There generally isn't that many differences between them from a gameplay point of view. You're talking about a few miles per hour here, a little bit of turning there. Not really a lot. What has always been really weird is the change in repair costs, and it's got even weirder now. So the V1 is down 6,000 repair cost. Now it's at 13,257. The V2 has gone up by 2,965. And the V3 has gone down by nearly 12,000. Now this is what I mean when it's obviously been done by an algorithm in a computer, or let's just call it an equation. Because all of these aircraft are very similar, they have very similar roles, but the differences between them are pretty much what people are using. So a lot of people are probably using the V2 to grind out the V3, and once they have the V3, maybe they're using it, but maybe they're not paying as much attention because they're not really grinding out anything, since it's one of the last vehicles that Japan has. It's just incredibly weird seeing it with that high of a repair cost. But now having the V2 with a higher repair cost than both of them, to me, it doesn't really make sense, but I'm sure there will be a reason for this. But overall, it would be much better just having them all at the same repair cost, since they are all incredibly similar vehicles in what they do. They have the same bomb load, same guns, pretty much same flight characteristics. There's no reason for a 10k repair difference between the V2 and the V3. Really, really odd there. The bombers in general go down, but by not a lot. And unfortunately, the G8 goes up to 18,000. So this is now more expensive than the majority of Japanese fighters, even though the majority of maps that it gets on, it's completely useless on. or you have to bomb carriers, and unless you're very good at it, that's not really going to happen, which is a shame. As a lot of the premiums went down, which is good, but let's get on to the ground vehicles. The only ones I really want to point out here are the Type 74, STB, and Hori. All the others are very minor changes, but the Type 74 and STB-1, two of the best vehicles that Japan has, are going up by 1,600 each. So the STB-1 goes up to 4,800, the Type 74 goes up to 5,900. Now this is still low compared to a lot of other vehicles from other nations, but it is now more comparable for the mediums at their tier. So I'm completely fine with that. The main issue with those vehicles is of course the cost of the shells, but they are very good vehicles, especially when down-tiered. So yeah, I don't have an issue with them going up a little bit. I've been running into a lot of STB-1s and Type 74s, and they're generally very good machines. They do well. The Hori production is up by 2,000, so it's getting a repair cost. Sorry, a RP decrease and Silver Lion decrease, but it's getting a repair cost increase. So we're going up to 6,900 for a 7.0 vehicle. I still think that's okay. It's a little bit high compared to some of the other vehicles. The fact that it's higher than the Type 74 and the STB-1 is very odd. It may actually be the most expensive vehicle for Japan. No, the Type 60 SPRG is 6,000. Yeah, it's the most expensive vehicle that Japan has. I have no idea why. I have no idea why this is this. I have no idea why the SPRG is at 6,060 at the end of the day. But the Hori production being the highest vehicle, very odd to see. To be honest, I think the Type 74 would get that role, or something like the STB-1. We do know that new Japanese rank 6 stuff is coming, so at the end of the day, we're going to see some new stuff, and we're going to have a look at what their costs are. Because if these are being increased, I'm guessing those are going to be increased as well, depending on how many there are. Italy, of course, there isn't really tanks to talk about. There's only 2 of them, so it's time to focus on some of the fighters. Now, some of the fighters that Italy have had since release have had insane repair costs, and this was only exemplified by the update 1.75 or update 1.77 patch. I believe it was the update 1.75 one, especially for the G56. For some reason, the G56 was decided that it was going to have a 30,000 Silver Line repair cost. No idea why. Absolutely no idea, apart from maybe people who were grinding through the Italian tree used the G56 to be able to grind out the jets, like experienced players when the Italians came out. So that has been dropped by 7,500 now, still 23,000 to repair, by the way. The G56 still way too high, but at least it is a bit lower than what it was before. Now the G56 I have really good stats in, but still having to pay 23,000 for a repair on a propeller aircraft is way too high. And then joining it now with a 2,000 increase is the G55 Series 1. That is now at 22,977. So that aircraft is now comparable to the G56 in repair price. I have no idea what's going on with these two vehicles. They are way too high, and you can tell that by comparing it to all of their compatriots. The G55S, is down by 5,500, which is really nice for it. That's the premium one, which was the bundle vehicle to get to the Italians early. But I cannot believe that this is so expensive, and also this is so expensive. They are double the cost, or nearly double the cost, of the second G91. They are double the cost and more than the first G91. Just put that into perspective. Very odd. And then the F84G sits at 21,000 for the Italians. Way too high once again. And also, I believe, if we look at the American one is at 14,400. The Italian one is at 21,000. So for some reason, the Italian GRE, which is exactly the same as the US one, is a third more expensive. And my guess is because of the teammates it has. But it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense in my head why they've done that. Moving on to France, there's been quite a few French changes. The fighters are overall down. The French fighters are kind of depressing in a way because of how they act, especially a lot of the lower tier ones. If you want to know my opinions on a lot of them, I did do reviews on the majority of them. But there is a few nice little sparks. So the MD 4522A, the new machine, is down by about 4,000, so it's only about 8,000 repair. I will be doing a short, quick, we're going to have a fly out of this thing, let's see how it is after the challenges are over, so at least that's nice to see that it'll cost me less to repair. It's still quite high for a vehicle that is seen as a mediocre 9.0. But on top of that, all of the American vehicles pretty much get dropped, apart from the V156, unfortunate. But the Bearcat and the AD4 and the P63C are all down by big amounts. The Bearcat is still expensive for what it is at 9,000, especially after the flight model changes that were done to the Bearcat a very long time ago, making it a lot worse than the counterparts at its BR, at least in my opinion. The big losers of this, though, are of course the Vautours. The Vautours, I feel like, are getting to the point now where people have been sick of them for a long time, so Gaijin has to do something about it. Basically price them out of the game, very much similar to the TU4 and the B29. So the 2B and the 2A both go up. The 2A sits at 9,900. The 2B is nearly at 20 grand. So these are slowly but surely getting up there. Now, they are hard to kill, but are they 20 grand hard to kill? That is the question. These are some of the most expensive jets in the game now. Just think about that. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. It's really up to you. For me personally, I think they're a bit pricey for what they are. On top of that, there is some stuff which is in Russian, which is kind of funny. So these are the Yak-9Ts, Yak-3, the premium ones. It's nice to see that they haven't translated them properly. But overall, there are some interesting changes to the tanks, and it mainly focuses on rank 4 and rank 5 for the French. So the main ones are the fact that the AMX-30B2 and the Brennus are both getting dropped to 4,300 and 4,260 respectively. So the top tier tanks for the French are incredibly cheap now to use. Does that make them combat effective? I mean, they're okay, but they're worse than the counterparts which have just come in. So T-64B, Abrams, Challenger, and then the Leopard 2K, they're all going to dance around the MX-30B2. And even the Leopard A1A1's going to as well. So it is nice to see it has been reduced, but overall, will it make a big difference? I highly doubt it. We're probably not going to see a lot of these on the battlefield. The AMX-30 1972, with the recent buffs that it's got, has actually become a vehicle at 7.3, which is usable, because it doesn't have to do with the RA, and its heat shell now acts as heat FS. It also got better stabilization on the gun, a little bit better engine. All of that stuff with recent buffs is now up to 8,800 on the repair cost. That's quite expensive, but we're going to have to see how it actually plays out. What is kind of surprising is that they increased it. I would have waited a little bit and then probably increased it, because I have seen a lot of them doing really well, especially the fact that they have the coaxial 20mm. It makes it really easy to deal with light tanks, which are the rampant things at 7.3 right now, RU-251, 906, a lot of the American lights, and I'm sure as the game goes on, we're going to see more light tanks come to the game, meaning that 20 is going to become invaluable. The Lorraine 40T, after its BR increase, now sits at 9,700 repair, so that is now incredibly expensive for what it is. The Lorraine 40T is still good. I don't think the people driving it really care about the repair cost. The main thing that they care about is the fact that their autoloader has changed, so they can't just keep going whip, 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 attack things. They have to wait a little bit, but at least they have to wait less time, I believe, than the old system. I'd have to do the calculations, I'm not sure on that. If I'm wrong, please correct me. The Lorraine 40T, though, at 9,700 being the most expensive, second most expensive tank for the... No, it's at 6.7, sorry, not 7.0. For the French, is not really a surprise. That is the one that a lot of people are playing, and they're playing it very well. The one which I'm disappointed by is the AMX 1390. The AMX 1390 with its HeatFS, stock HeatFS, so you don't have to pay for it, has gone up to 9,580. This is an incredibly expensive vehicle now. Now you can make that back through scouting and also getting a few kills, so you know, it's not insurmountable. It would be nice though if light tanks cost a little bit less to repair. They are smaller, it makes a bit more sense, there's less crew. But no, instead we get this vehicle which is, what, the third most expensive for the French. So to me that doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you look at the other costs. The AMX13 FL11, the 13 and the Hot, like they're all way cheaper than the 1390. I understand the 1390 is very good, but in my opinion so is the 1375 and so is the AMX13 FL11, and the Hot, well, it's not very good, so I understand why that's a little bit less. On top of this, some of the big autoloaders have been hit. So the AMX M4 sits now at 9,700 repair cost. That's high. It's basically a Lorraine with a bit more armor and a little bit less speed. The AMX 50 is now up to 17,000, so they're pretty much trying to price this out of existence, which is a shame because it's a fun vehicle to use. But making 17,000 on one vehicle in ground forces is definitely not the easiest thing to do. It's very hard to do. So to see that happen to a vehicle pretty much prices it out, as I said. So yeah, I hope that gets reduced very quickly, since it is obviously an abnormal amount compared to everything else that we see in this tag tree. If you want to put it around 10k, do that. 17,000, you're never going to make money with it, even premium. Even with premium, you won't make money for this thing. The AMX 50 Surbassé sits at 9,200. After basically all of these machines have got a BR increase recently, so their repair costs to match that makes sense, but these are definitely on the high end compared to other nations that we're seeing, and that's probably down to the fact that they have the autoloader and the speed behind them, picking, which are two categories which are very in meta right now in the game. So it is sad to see it go up, but the saddest thing is just the normal AMX 50. On top of this, the Foch, I have no idea why, but the Foch goes up. The Foch is at 3,200, meaning that, sorry, it's gone up by 3,200, so it sits at around 10k, or at 10k, sorry. And the issue with the Foch, in my opinion, I've never seen it do very well. I've seen a lot of people hype it up, but generally the issue with it is it's still a non-turreted tank destroyer, so it gets clipped in the side. And it's not very quick, so it's not very versatile, and it's got a long reload. Yes, it has like a big gun on the top of it, and also a big gun in the form of the 120, but still, 10k repair costs for this thing. What is the reason for me to take this now over the Surbassé? There isn't one, because it's more expensive now. Armor, I mean, sure, maybe, but you don't pick these French tanks for armor, especially at the level that you find them at, so that's very odd to see. To be honest, I would have actually made the Foch cheaper than the Surbassé, the AMX 50, and the AMX M4, just so there is a reason to use it, which isn't just BR dependent. So overall, what we've seen is nice changes to the British, apart from the heavy bombers. I wish the heavy bombers at some point for Britain got loved, especially for the Lincoln. It would be nice to see it get its proper bomb load, but overall, they're pretty much just thrown prices around for them, it seems, for the heavy bombers, and I don't really know why. For Japan, great changes. Really nice to see a lot of reductions on the fighters, especially, so hopefully we see a few more of them running about rank 4. Italy, the changes didn't go far enough. I believe the G56 and the G55 Series 0 should be more reduced, and the Votor should be reduced a little bit more, and the G91 should have been increased, because they seem to be a sleeper vehicle that everybody seems to forget about every once in a while. They are competitive at 8, they're competitive at 9, they ruffle stomp at 7. If we look at the French, I think they've gone overboard with the pricing. The MX-50 is just not profitable, unless you don't take any damage. The Surbassé is really expensive now. The Lorraine, the M4, the Foch, they pretty much hit all the autoloaders and the Foch with big price tags now. And I personally think that would not be the way to fix an issue that they see. They've already upped the BR. They should wait and see how they do at that BR instead of significantly changing the amount that they cost to actually repair. That's very sad to see, especially for the AMX50. Like 17 grand for a ground vehicle is just insane to me, and even unheard of maybe. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.